Oh, it is good to see everybody. But Psalm 49, this is a psalm regarding, and you may even have it in the title there just below it, this kind of subtitle, The Folly of Trusting in Riches. Beginning in verse 1, it's just these 13 verses. Hear this, all peoples. Give ear, all inhabitants of the world, both low and high, rich and poor together. My mouth will speak wisdom, and the meditation of my heart will be understanding. I will incline my ear to a proverb. I will express my riddle on the harp. Why should I fear in the days of adversity, when the iniquity of my foes surround me? Even those who trust in their wealth and boast in the abundance of their riches. No man can by any means redeem his brother, or give to God a ransom for him. For the redemption of his soul is costly, and he should cease trying forever, that he should live on eternally, that he should not undergo decay. For he sees that even wise men die. The stupid and the senseless alike perish, and leave their wealth to others. Their inner thought is that their houses are forever, and their dwelling places are to all generations. They have called their lands after their own names, but man in his pomp will not endure. He is like the beasts that perish. This is the way of those who are foolish, and of those after them who approve their words. It says, give ear, all inhabitants. Psalm 33 in verse 8 says, let all the earth fear. Let all the inhabitants of the earth stand in awe of him. That inhabitants of the earth is not just talking about people. That is everything under the sun, everything that has been created. The entire earth bears witness to who God is and is to stand in awe of him. It's very interesting when you look at the animal kingdom as an example. There are certainly nurturing aspects there of maybe one taking care of her cubs or whatnot. But ultimately it's simply a matter of survival. It's not a questioning of this or that. This is instinct. This is what needs to be done in order for me to survive. As people, though, we tend to question most everything. We don't just simply say our instinct should be to follow God. Very much as the poem goes, ours is not to reason why, ours is but to do and die. We trust in so many other things, and we question at every turn, and we question the authority of God. And it's a matter of no, our instincts should be to trust in God and to follow him, come what may, because our very survival depends on it. My mouth will speak wisdom. Now, we have a lot of people who try to speak wisdom. They say pithy phrases or whatnot, but Paul would write over in 1 Corinthians 3 and verse 19, that man's wisdom is foolishness to God. Isaiah 55 and verse 8 tells us that his ways are so much higher, his thoughts are so much higher than ours. No matter, even the best of us on our best day, saying something profound that has never been heard before nor uttered, is foolishness to God. God's wisdom is there, and he says, my mouth will speak wisdom. And it says, I will incline my ear to a proverb. Now, when we think of that, when we think of apostles in the New Testament, we know that there's about 18 to 20 apostles to include Christ. The apostoli, the original term is simply a messenger. One who proclaims. You might think of medieval times and someone going out, before a proclamation saying, hear ye, the king is speaking or what have you. That's the idea there. The inhabitants of the world, that they will listen for this proverb. Someone is coming out, someone is going to utter wisdom, and not man's wisdom, but God's wisdom. And he begins, hear ye, all the earth, stand up, listen. Be in awe of God. I am about to speak the words of God to you. And he begins with the question, why should I fear adversity? Why should I fear? The Lord is my salvation, Psalm 27 and verse 1. The Lord is my salvation. And then the question, whom should I fear? Whereas Christ would say over in Matthew 10 and verse 28, do not fear him that can kill the body, but fear him that can destroy both the body and soul in hell, which we know is eternal darkness, a place of weeping and gnashing of teeth, a place of torment and torture. Why should I fear in the days of adversity when the iniquity of my foes surrounds me? What do we fear today? That's a genuine question. What do we fear today? Do we fear things, and I'll just put it this way because this is the way we hear political pundits say it all the time. Do we fear the quote-unquote homosexual agenda? Do we fear, the upstanding, not upstanding in the sense of its moral value, but just how the courts have kept it up, Roe versus Wade and abortion? Do we fear here in the United States or something that we're going to be persecuted because of our beliefs, because people don't like God as a whole? But why do we fear these things? And that's the question. That's the question that's being asked. Why should I fear in the days of adversity? We're in days of adversity right now, where the world just becomes more godless every day. Turn on the news or get on social media, whatever the case may be. But why should we fear even when the iniquity surrounds us? And it's on all sides. And these people, they boast in their sin. Here it says they boast in their wealth. They trust in their wealth. They boast in the abundance of their riches. Why should we be afraid of that? We think about these things, and abortion and homosexuality, they've been around almost since the beginning. They're not going anywhere anytime soon. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't speak out on these things. I'm not saying that they're not sin and that we shouldn't call them sin. Sin is sin, and we need to expose it as such. But we don't need to be afraid of it. It was here before we got here. It's here while we're here. It's going to be here after we're gone. So what we are to do is very much like this, is that we will incline our ears to hear the words of God. That's what we listen for. That's what we cling to. He sees it even, verse 10, wise men die. And I love the latter portion of verse 10, at least in my translation. It might even be clearer in the NIV or the ESV or something. The stupid and senseless alike perish. That's kind of interesting when you consider what's been going on before. We look at it, and the inhabitants of the world, with them trusting in their riches, with them trusting in their wisdom, enemies all around, God essentially calls them stupid and senseless. Now, Jesus said a little bit kinder from the cross when he said, Father, forgive them. They do not know what they're doing. They're stupid. They don't know any better. And that's why we who are faithful and we try to be godly, we cling to that so that we might extol the Proverbs, the wisdom of God, to everyone else. We think of the rich man who stored up all his grain in his silos, and it was too much for him, and he says to himself, "Self, what am I going to do?" I can imagine this maybe split personality conversation going on. I have so much grain. What am I going to do? Well, let's think about this for a moment, Self. Really? Well, what do you think? Well, I think we should build more silos. That's the conversation that he's having with himself. And yet God comes out of the mist and says, "Fool, tonight your soul is required of you." Trusting so much in the abundance of this world. It even goes to say their dwelling places, they think their houses are forever. They call lands after their own names. Now, don't get me wrong, okay? I'm not saying, if you have, for instance, maybe the Leonard Ranch or something. I'm not saying that's wrong, okay? But it's that trust factor there, that they're trusting in this and they leave it to other people thinking that it's going to endure. What legacy do we have to leave people with? What do we have? They say that even old money, as it's called, doesn't generally last past the third generation. Because that second and third generation, they didn't have to work to earn the money. It just kind of fell into their lap, and then they spend it not knowing its value or what have you. It's houses or cars, money, whatever. We can't take it with us. And to those that we may leave it to, eventually that will go away too. Maybe not by them, maybe it takes a generation or two. The only lasting legacy that we have is the Word of God that we are to leave people. Paul writes, we have this treasure in earthen vessels. The Bible says that man came from the dust, and to the dust he's going to return. I want to try an exercise with you, not here, because it would take too long. To just think about the present moment. When you go home, if you have a loved one at home, do this. If there's not, for whatever reason, maybe do it to someone here. Okay? I know we're in COVID. We're going to relax social distancing for this experiment. But I just want you to give your loved one or this other person a hug. Not just a quick little hug like that. But I want you to give them a hug, and when you do, I want you to think to yourself, one day we will both be dead. Now that I realize that's kind of maybe a morbid thought. But just take the time to do that. To see that this life is fleeting and everything in it will one day vanish like the wind. All that matters is the legacy that we leave with the people here. And the only legacy worth leaving is the wisdom of God. Incline your ear to hear that. Extol that among the people. And don't be afraid when you look out at the world and see yourself surrounded by sin. You can be a light in the darkness. If you need help with that, if there's anything at all that anybody here can do to help you become that light if you don't feel that way already, or to talk through your problems, or maybe it's someone here that you want to give a hug to, and just think, one day we will both be gone. Don't say it out loud to them, because whispering that in their ear, that's a little creepy, okay? Just think that to yourself. All we have is each other and God. But even having each other, God is the only one worth having. If there's anything at all that we can do to help, let us know. Come forward as we stand and sing.